Hey, y'all. This is the final episode of season 1, and we are bringing it with Jen Cohen. She is an author, she is a TEDx speaker, she is a serial entrepreneur who is, let's face it, a badass in the wellness space. This conversation is jam-packed with wisdom and takeaways. We're talking about confidence, we're talking about courage, we're talking about grit. Whether that is for adults or kids, it is not to be missed. Tune in. Are you ready for a wild ride? I'm Alexis Arton, and I invite you to strap in because this is more than a podcast. This is Look at Me Now. Okay, y'all. This is the final episode of season 1 of Look at Me Now. And I needed to end it with a bang. I actually wasn't going to do a 10th episode. And then we got today's guest. And I said, I'm going to do it. I've got to do it. So I'm sitting here with, honestly, a lot of imposter syndrome because I am sitting across from somebody who is really doing it, really bringing it. Her name is Jen Cohen. You may already know of her because she is an author. She is an expert in God, just about everything that anybody should care about these days. And I am so grateful to have just a little bit of her time to share her with you. And I'm actually going to throw it to her to say, what do you most want people to know about the work that you're doing? Because I could go on and on about, well, like you're going into confidence work, you're going into this, you're going to, you've got this fitness background, you've got all of this expertise. It's like, certifications out the wazoo and education and real life experience of working with like all of these celebrities. And it's really fantastic what you've been able to accomplish. And so what when I ask you, do you say right now is the thing that you most want to be recognized for, known for?
Wow. Okay. Well, I think that's an interesting question because I think everything I've done to this point are all just dots that connect, right? That we all do, right? We all like have dots that we connect the dots, but we don't know how they connect until later on in our life. And I think if I really saw like the pattern, like I think if you were to ask me 10 years ago, I would have like no idea. It looked like a big like splotchy painting. But the reality is I think everything though connects to really the through line is building confidence, self-confidence, self-esteem, in people, just having and people being just a little bit more courageous to be authentic than they were yesterday. And I think if you were to ask me today what my goal is, I think that for me it is to do that, instilling confidence, instilling self-esteem in children, because I think it starts when you're young. And I think a lot of times we are remiss in building it at that for the young people, and we start focusing on it later on in our life, which then can be, you bring a lot of baggage, you bring a lot of experience. And if we can instill confidence and build confidence and true self-esteem when we're young, I think it really kind of creates a trail for a path for us that makes us unstoppable later on. So that's what I would say.
Well, you're an embodiment of it, which I'm a big fan of, right? It's the walk the talk, right? And I also happen to know that our mess is what becomes our message. So I'm curious for you, where did this inspiration to work with people on confidence come from?
Well, I think this is how it all kind of happened, right? If I were to say what my word is, I use the word bold, like to be bold in life, right? Like to act bolder, because I believe that boldness is truly the secret sauce to success, to our overall happiness. It teaches us it helps us ask for what we want, to be who we are. And I think that's a great thing you said, like our message is in our mess. And I think when I was younger, it took a lot of me kind of finagling and looking and trying a lot of things to realize that if I just harnessed the skill of boldness, that really the world is my oyster. And I kind of really use that. And I use that over and over again for all these years where it became my new normal. It like changed the neuroplasticity in my brain where I didn't have to pretend to be something I wasn't or act to be something I wasn't. I kind of just am always, and I learned that just through like trial and error, where I am who I am. I say what I say. You like me, great. If you don't, that's okay too. And I'm not looking for outside validation. And I think that you can only get to that place with having the wherewithal and experience of knowing what it's like when you are looking for that. So when I was young, I kind of didn't feel like I fit in very well. Like I kind of felt like I was like always the odd man out or like the black sheep. And I don't know if people would actually, if people around me knew that I felt that way, but that's really how I felt. Like I kind of like, not to use another cliche, but like beat to my own drum. And because of that, like I would always feel like strange. But over time, I recognized that that was a great power I had. That was what made me unique. That's what made me different. So like that weirdness or that mediocrity or that like, you know, that thing that I thought was like a negative, I turned it around and I reframed that to be a positive. And because of that, I just kept on going with it. And in what I do today, and by the way, I should say that fitness for me was a catalyst. It was like kind of like the catalyst still is the foundation of where everything comes from. Because if you build your physical strength, it does make you mentally stronger, and it teaches you so many other fundamentals and like true life skills, like discipline, patience, you know, seeing how when you work for something, what you like hard work, like how things like to get what you want, there's a path of work that's involved. And I really do use that as a fundamental to have built what I feel like I have built inside.
It's funny. A couple things populated for me as you were sharing that. One is a mentor of mine used to talk about two things, and one of them was that courage was a prerequisite for confidence. And it's that boldness that you speak of, that courage, if you will, that, you know, if you can muster up, you know, whatever it is, 15, 30 seconds of courage, you can do anything.
Right.
And also this idea of the tall poppy syndrome of in a field of poppies, the tallest one gets cut down to size so that it doesn't stick out and ruin the aesthetic of standing out amongst all these short poppies. Like the field all needs to be the same. And so many people suffer from this tall poppy syndrome where they feel like I am the odd man out. I am, you know, not like the others. I'm the lion amongst the lambs. And so I need to like pull myself back, maybe dim my light, shrink myself down, play a little smaller so that I can fit in with everybody. And there's a detriment to that. But at the same time, we all are co-regulated species. Loneliness is an epidemic and belonging is crucial. It's a human need. And so it's so interesting how you've been able to bridge that gap between connection and at the same time not sacrificing your own self-advocacy and your own self-agency and your own superpowers.
Yeah, I love that you said that. That's a great analogy. That's a great one. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, I don't want to misspeak, but I think it's from
okay.
like over the pond.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you said something about courage. So to me, boldness and courage are like brothers and sisters, right? They're very similar. And I do this speech about being, can you be brave for 5 seconds? Because really, if you could just be brave for that 5 seconds or 10 seconds, that's really what it is, right? The stop is in the start, right? So if you are able just to do it for that moment, everything else is much easier after that. Like whenever we think about something in our head, we catastrophize, right? We think that it's going to be so much worse than what it actually is, right? Like, you know, those nights, and we've all had them. I have them often still. I mean, we all do, where you're up at night, you can't fall asleep, and then like you think of something, and you think of all the bad things that are going to happen, and you literally could just catastrophize whatever that thing is. And then when it actually happens, It's never as bad. It's never as bad as you think it is. And if we could remember that and remind ourselves of those things, we would be so much happier, and we would actually chase what we actually wanted instead of just accepting what we got. Because what we have now, we have a lot of people just acquiescing to what's in front of them, to what's good enough, as opposed to truly targeting and going after what they actually want, what they actually like, what they're more where they're meant to be, who they're supposed to be. And like, to your point, which I find to be very, very, very on point and very astute, is if loneliness is the biggest epidemic, we're dying of loneliness. And in a world now where social media has taken over and technology has taken over, we don't even have real friends. We have social media friends, right? Like, our dopamine hit is coming from a like that we find, or engagement on this other platform. You know, before I got here, I was looking at this girl, this social media, influencer girl that I like follow. And she literally was I couldn't believe what I was listening to. She was saying how today, and she was being serious. She's like, having engagement on social media is her love language. That's her love language now. And I thought, like, if I kept on reading, I would see some other message go in there. But it never happened. That literally is what she was saying. And I thought to myself, like, wow, like, not only like, what kind of message are you putting out there to the world, that now what your love language and what makes you feel full in life is having engagement from the majority of strangers out there who don't even know you, who you don't even see, because we all need that like external validation so badly. We've been programmed to now feel that we are not even seeking real connection in real life, or real connection in real life is dismissed because of this like false feeling of engagement, then it becomes like this whole ripple effect of like loneliness, and why these relationships are not even occurring, and we're all in these like situationships and not dating and not having sex. Like, what's happened in our world has become very sad to me. And for someone like me who has kids, you have kids as well, I don't want that for my kids, which is a long ass way of saying when you asked me initially, like, what my purpose is, or what I would say now is what I want to be known for, it is to build true self-efficacy, self-esteem in young people, because I don't want that to be what my kids are looking to and looking for to fill them up, to feel satiated. I want them to feel like, you know what, no matter what's happening on social media, I'm okay. I don't have to compare myself to Anne or Mary or Jane to feel like I'm a person. I can be myself. I can be different than the rest of these people and shine. And I want to have real relationships. Like, I want to be able to make sure my kids have these fundamentals that are so crucial for your mental health and for you to feel confident in life. Because you were saying earlier how courage is important for confidence, but also feeling competent is essential for confidence. And if you don't feel competent, you're never going to feel confident. And the only way to feel confident in the world is to do things, to do hard things. And I'm not talking about posting on social media and liking someone's bullshit reel. The only way to do that is offline and putting things, like following through, doing certain things, feeling that you are an effective, efficient human being, and feeling productive.
Amen to all of that. And I also find it so fascinating that we have become this world that everything is externally measured. Everything is an algorithm. Everything is a numbers game. And we're trying to measure something that is immeasurable, which is our ability to know that we are inherently lovable, valuable, that there is a uniqueness to me, to you, to everyone that isn't measurable by any external standards. And it is worrying when we see our little people, because yes, we do have kids, so we see it up close and personal, where they are internalizing the rules of what gets me love, what gets me acknowledgement, how do I feel like I'm getting ahead, how do I feel like I'm staying safe. And they are getting it from YouTube, and they're getting it from TikTok, and they're getting it from sources that are not actually seeing them, to your point, and don't have their best interest at heart.
No, they don't have anything. They have nothing no best interest at heart. It's basically all painted with the same brush of what's going to get the most likes and views. Now, this is the truth. The truth is, you can't beat them because they're winning, right? So if you're going to have to join them, at least pack your toolbox with things that will allow you a chance to rise above it and not only use what they give you. So what I mean by that is, like, if our kids are already like, we can't control, we can only control you so much, right? Like, they're all their friends have devices. They're going to be on there. They're going to be watching YouTube. They're going to be doing TikTok. They're going to be doing it all. So then what can we do to safeguard them from all that nonsense that they're going to get from that?
Especially young women.
Yeah.
I mean, I have 2 boys, and I have my own concerns about
yes.
that. But I also really, I turn my lens to the young girls who, we had the patriarchy at large to deal with, but now the social media has really turned the dial up.
Yeah. Well, that's funny because you know what? It's not even just young girls. Women our age are just as affected
Truth.
with, in fact, actually, all the statistics, not to tell you, we're saying all these about the analytics and the statistics are showing that women in our age group, their anxiety, their depression, their feeling of not being good enough has risen like 58 to, I think it was like 78, like some crazy number percent since Instagram has taken on, right? Since social media has become social media.
I believe it.
Like, it's not just young people. Mm-mm. It's happening with people who are like already grown adults.
Oh yeah, it's got a stranglehold on all of us.
It is, because, by the way, like I was saying, like, we already have, like, we're coming to the party already loaded with our own mishigas, our own craziness, our own baggage, our own nonsense, our own trauma, our own whatever triggers, whatever you want to call it, right? And so that is why it's so important to at least give tools to people at these young kids where they at least have some chance, because I feel like we're dealing with it already, and it's really hard. And the only way to do that is to really, for an adult kid, never mind any of it. Like, how do you feel good enough? How do you feel strong enough that what you see on social media doesn't take you down a really bad rabbit hole of like negativity and feeling like, because the weird thing is, we know psychologically, theoretically, we know what we see on Instagram. We all know like that it's a highlight reel, right? Mm-hmm. We all know that. Like, no one's posting their shitty relationship on there, or their like terrible day, or their bad angle in their in their bikini. They're not doing it. Some people are, but very rarely, right? And yet, even though we know this, like intuitively, psychologically, it still doesn't change how we feel about ourselves when we see it. Like, what does that say? Like, if I'm watching people on Instagram all day who look like they have a better job than I do, who look prettier than me, who have like a great relationship, and they're on a yacht or in a private plane, and I know most of it's like a bunch of nonsense, that still doesn't change where I go in my head, right? In terms of like, why am I don't have like
compare and despair.
Compare and despair.
Yeah.
Why is that? You know what I mean? Like it's a very
Yeah,
strange.
survival of the fittest, right? It's like, well, how do I position myself amongst all of this competition? And again, I go back to the patriarchy. I'm not going to like hit that over the head
No, go ahead, do
necessarily,
it.
but you know, it really does come down to this idea of, in order for me to get mine as a woman in this world, when I'm already a second-rate citizen compared to men, then I already have that level of competition. And now I've got to fight you in order to get mine because he wants the most beautiful woman, right? There's
Yes.
only so many spots for women to make enough money to have that yacht on their own. You know, we are also the ones who, our bodies are going to change if we have kids, or when we go through menopause, or when we go through this or go through that. You know, there's so much that we have to endure that our counterparts don't necessarily have to. But I also want to go back
Yeah.
to, because this podcast really does focus on this idea of like human resilience, and you talking about competence and confidence and courage and all of these things sort of being like the, you know, a chain link of how we get successful, right? And by the way, I don't say successful as externally measured.
Yeah,
I
I
mean it
know.
as a, right. Okay. So clarifying for y'all out there.
I always do that too, right? Because people automatically assume when you say successful, you're talking monetarily, professionally. I always say, you know, success to me that's like one piece of the pie.
Right.
Yeah.
Success to me is a sense of internal satisfaction, true fulfillment, right?
I agree with you 100%.
And oftentimes when I feel that, it's because I am giggling with my child or something. It has nothing to do with like I'm on a yacht or a private plane with a celebrity, right?
100%. I could not agree with you more.
Right. And so, but anyway, where I was going with that was this idea of boldness, right? And this idea of being courageous and gaining competence, and that is where like, and leading into that growth edge. And that's where our greatness lives, right? And that's where ultimately success will come on the other side, is because we have stepped into knowing what we are capable of, seeing all of the possibilities and all of the potential, and allowing ourselves to swell into and take up that space, regardless of the outcome. That's the key point, regardless of the outcome. So to me, it is about somebody showing up and looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, the fact that you were bold and you tried, that's everything. I don't care what the result is.
100%. So I will also add to that in the path of making those attempts and trying is where you gain the most confidence, right?
Yes.
That is where you build your resilience. That is where failure becomes kind of like you become desensitized to it because you're doing it so much where you don't feel it as much. It doesn't feel as bad anymore.
It's like exposure therapy.
Right. It is exposure therapy.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I compare it.
Yeah.
So I have this entire mindset philosophy, right? I did an entire TED Talk on this. And this is the TED Talk this is the one I did on boldness that went viral because I think it really hit a nerve with people.
Yeah.
And it's because the truth of the matter is most people don't make one attempt at whatever it is that they want. Almost zero people make 2 attempts. So if you're a person who's making multiple attempts, more than 2 attempts, just on pure volume alone, you're going to get closer to who you really are, to what you really want, to who you want to be. That's the first part. But while going through the whole process, the process is how you become that resilient, bold human being. Because now you've kind of primed your brain for these 10 attempts. You know what you have to do. So knowing is half the battle, and then going and walking the path is the other, right? And so that's how I teach people to be bolder, to get that courage, to gain that confidence, because you can only get to that place by going through the steps. You can't miss a step, right? Like people always are looking for the shortcut. There is no shortcut in life. There's no magic pill. There's no magic potion. There is no shortcuts. You know, it is, unfortunately, I hate for people to hear this, but it's called hard work. You have to do the work. You got to do the work to feel competent, to be confident, to build self-esteem. You have to do the work. Those are all skills that are within every one of us, but we have to work it. It's like a muscle. If you don't work that muscle, it's going to
Atrophy.
It will atrophy, right? And you just won't have it. If you work it, you get stronger and tougher, and then you have to maintain it. And the only way to even to do the maintenance and to maintain it is to, guess what? Do some work.
the work.
Yeah, you got to do the work. There's no shortcut. You know, we can talk all day if you want about manifestation and visualization and all those things. But guess what? Those things don't work unless there's
You do the
action
work.
and there's work.
Right.
There's no misstepping that piece of the pie. Like,
Yeah.
no matter what, you can give me anything you want. The law of attraction, you can call it whatever you want. Put any hashtag on there. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it all equals to hard work.
That's right. Because we're soul and we're body. We're energy and we're matter. The rubber's got to meet the road.
The rubber has to meet the road, 100%.
Yes. I think that's really well said. And I think that a lot of people can relate to that because there is a buzzword that's going around in my community about how they feel like their children don't have enough grit.
Oh my gosh, now you're speaking my language.
Right.
So grit, by the way, is the number one trait for future success. Success in every way you want to call it. Personal success, professional success, internal success, external success. It doesn't matter. Grit is the number one trait. And grit is the number one thing that is completely just depreciated over time. We as a society now do not raise children, unfortunately, in most communities that have grit. Did you know? I just did an entire thing on this. In fact, actually, did you know that children over the age of 18 years old, who are now 20% of them, are unable, like physically unable to go to a job interview, 20% without taking a parent with them, or they ask to take their parent because they don't have that ability on their own. We've coddled our children to such a place now where they are incapable of being competent. It comes back to the word of competent. And like, it has become a real problem. I say we're living, I talk about this in my book. We live in a coddle culture. Everyone's getting a participation trophy. There's no such thing as a winner and a loser. God forbid you trigger someone by saying this or by saying that. We are teaching our kids not only not to be gritty, but we're teaching them to be like, kind of like the antithesis, whatever that word would be.
Do you think this is a result of helicopter parenting?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is helicopter parent. I think a lot of it is we're living in, I don't know where you stand on the political, pendulum here, but I will say I think a lot of it is our woke culture. I think the woke culture has breeded a lot of weakness in people where if you say the wrong thing and if it's not PC enough and it's not this enough, where people are afraid to offend anyone, to tell them what they really think, to actually stand and be different.
Well, I hear you saying to be the tall poppy.
Yeah, to be the tall poppy. To get back to that, I think that in a place where I think the culture, I think that they came from a good place. Right? It wasn't because there was like, it's like the path to good intentions. I think the intention was there, but I think the path to getting there has really been detrimental to building gritty children, to building authenticity, to building people who have a strong opinion, who are unique and different. I think what's happened is unless you assimilate to be like everybody else, then you will be ostracized. And because people are so fearful of being ostracized and being lonely and being more shut out or being fired or being canceled, they will just assimilate. And we are teaching this and breeding this in our youth. And I think it's so dangerous and I think it's so poisonous. And the more I see it, the more I get so angered by it, because I don't want my kids, again, to be growing up in this way, where if they're not saying the right thing or doing the right thing and being who they think they have to be, like they get, as you put, like the poppy thing, they get shoved to the side. They get ostracized. They become the black sheep.
Well, and it's interesting because it's a regression to when we were tribal, and you either fell in line with the tribe,
Right.
and you did as you were told, and you were a cog in the wheel. If you were to, break a command or whatever, if you were to fall out of line, you were forced out and into the elements, and it meant death for you. And we had evolved from that to everybody gets to be their own individual, and we did. We went from a tribal culture to being more individualized, but we're sort of regressing now back, to your point, into a society where it's like, if you want to stay safe, if you don't want to be ostracized, if you want to be part of the tribe, then you need to get along with and assimilate to what the tribe is holding as, this is how we operate. This is what we stand by. This is what we believe in. And if you can't get in line with that, then you're cast out.
You're cast aside, right? The irony, though, is that if you ever speak to people like one-on-one or like on the side, so many people are like of like mind, don't agree with this PC type of how you're supposed to say it and do and whatever else. And yet it's still not able to make a change. Like, I feel there should be a revolt of some kind, right? But there's not, because it's still not there yet, right? But I mean, to answer your question from earlier on, that's where I think it begins, from what I said earlier. But I don't know I think at this point, it's really about focusing on yourself and how you could at least act differently, be different, to at least be as authentic and as real and live the life and be the person that you want to be.
That's the key word that I'm pulling out of that, is authentic. Authentic is something that it's a buzzword that I sometimes worry people miss the nuance of, which is, are you authentically being authentic, right? As crazy as that sounds. But it's like, there is such an epidemic of hijacking other people's values, other people's narratives, agendas, expectations. It happens so young that we're not even aware that we're doing it. We're not even conscious that we're not authentic.
Yeah, 100% true.
And so I think that there is, talk about a revolution to be had of authenticism. Like, how does one come back to really doing the work of going, this is who I truly am, and this is how I'm going to stand in and for that in my life boldly.
Well, also, why is it that we have to why is it that we can't just be okay with other people just being who they are? I think there's so much criticism, and if you don't agree with what I believe and who I am, I will get such, backlash just in general, like from other people, where why can't we just let everyone just be who they want to be and be fine with it? That's the other real problem.
Yeah. It's interesting. A friend of mine, another coach, sent an email newsletter recently, and there's some sort of a method or something that he was referring to, but the essence of it was talking about intellectual humility, and how there are, like, I'm just going to give like an analogy. There's these coaches out there, these gurus out there, that they're definitive and their answer is the answer and their perspective is the perspective. And then you go over to, let's say, a PhD neuroscientist of some sort, and they're like, I'm completely open to being wrong. Please show me why I might be wrong. Please show me what I might be missing, rather than doubling down on, I'm immovable on what I know to be true.
Yes.
And I think that somewhere in there lives our ability to actually be authentic, to inquire, to allow space and room for an inquiry as to, is that the truth? Right?
Well, like to what you were just saying, yes, I think it's being curious, right? I think being curious is so fundamental in
Fundamental.
growth in life. When you were asking me earlier about about boldness, about courage, I think another sister brother to all of that is curiosity. I think curiosity is how we find opportunity. It's how we find we find relationships. We find so much things within this curiosity space. And the second we shut it down or we're just not interested, it's when it's basically when growth stops.
It's where possibility goes to die.
But yeah, possibility goes to die is true. Like some of the best things I've ever stumbled upon or opportunities I've ever had was because I was curious, authentically curious, not just asking because I thought I should ask, but because I genuinely wanted to know. Like before we started this podcast, we were talking and I was like asking you all those questions because about yourself, about who you are. And like what you were saying was actually interesting for me. So I want to know more. But I think what's happened is people are just not interested in anybody or anything that is not similar to them. And like to me, the most interesting people in the world are people that have things to say, right? And who are interested. Like if you are interested, you are interesting. If you
Yes.
lack the ability to have interest, I want nothing to do with you because that says so much about who you are as a human being.
Absolutely. And I actually think even to add to this concept of, because you only want what's like you, what's familiar to you, so many people make an assumption that somebody isn't.
Yes.
And they're wrong, because there is a thread that connects us all. And when we're not curious, we're never going to find it. And I'm going to tell this story as an example of that. I was on a plane recently, like a week and a half ago.
Where were you going?
I was actually going to an incredible retreat,
Okay.
led by Radha Agrawal, who's the founder of Daybreaker and of Thinks and whatnot. It was a phenomenal retreat.
Where
And
was it? See, I told you
it
I'm
was,
curious.
Yes, it was at her farm in Rhinebeck, New York.
Okay.
And anyway, her mission of the Belong Center and the Belong Institute is to end loneliness, which is why loneliness was at the top of my thought process. But I digress. I was on the plane flying there, and shout out to you, Rada, I love you. I was on the plane flying there, and I was sitting next to a woman, and I had my headphones on, and I'm working away on my laptop, and we were an hour into the flight. I think maybe I said, "Excuse me," to her to get to my seat, and that was about it. The next thing I know, about an hour into the flight, all of a sudden this little 2-year-old boy lands on her lap, and it becomes clear to me that's her grandchild. And so that was where I got curious. Oh, who's this cute little guy? Hi, and then we start talking. The 2-year-old goes back to his seat with his mom, who's sitting somewhere else, and she's like, "Yeah, that was my grandson. We were at Disneyland." We get to talking. She's telling me her history. I'm telling her my history. And she's talking about that she owned health food stores. And long story short, she said, this is a great story. And I'm telling it because it's so inspirational as well. She's like, I was 58 years old and I had done my health store businesses my whole life. And I'm a chocoholic. I love eating chocolate. And I didn't like how much sugar was in chocolate. And Pepsi and Coke had just forced the FDA to put stevia on the approved foods list. And so I thought, I'm going to get my hands on some stevia and I'm going to make a sugar-free chocolate. And she spent 2 years diddling in her kitchen trying to make a delicious sugar-free chocolate. When she had nailed it, she shared some of the chocolate with her friends in the health food industry, who all said, "This is delicious. You should actually start a business." She said, "I had no intention of starting a business, but my friends insisted. So I brought it to some friends that I knew at Whole Foods. The next thing you know, it was in every store. Now it's all over the country. It's called Lily's."
I know very well Lily's.
Who doesn't? And this woman ended up selling her Lily's chocolate business that she started at 58 years old in her kitchen from a personal chocolate craving and a health history to selling it for like 700 something million dollars to the Hershey Company.
I love that story.
She's a lifelong like soul sister now. And had I not been curious because that little baby came and sat on her lap, I never would have talked to her. I would have had my headphones on the whole time, head buried in a laptop, just tap, tap, tapping away. And I would have missed this incredible connection to this woman with such an inspiring story, who I have no doubt is going to play some part in my future evolution of serving people. To no end am I never humbled by the universe and its ability to go, I'm going to light up the runway for you if you stay curious.
I love that story, and I just love that story. And it's 100% true, because that is literally how the majority of my life has happened. And like people would say to me all the time, like, oh, Jennifer, you're like the living Forrest, like you're like a real life Forrest Gump.
Oh my God, everybody calls me that. They say you're the Forrest Gump of the feminine.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
We're new best friends, everybody. I'm sorry. Now you can just excuse yourselves. We're just going to have a love affair.
That's hilarious. Like, because I stumble upon these crazy ass stories, like these crazy ass experiences, meeting the craziest people, these craziest opportunities. And like people always ask me, well, Jennifer, how did that happen? Or how did you get here? Or how did you end up doing that? And the truth is, like, I put myself in a position for that opportunity to happen because I was curious.
Yeah.
And I would ask questions. I'd always, and like maybe questions that maybe seemed inappropriate to 99% of the people, but to me, I was genuinely curious about something. So when people had that like earnestness, they answer you properly. No, they don't feel offended by you because I'm coming from a good place. And I will tell you, time and time again, the biggest and best opportunities ever came from those situations for me. Jobs, friends, like events, whatever it be. And that Lily story is really great. Like that to me is a great story of like, never count yourself out because of your age. Like people think, oh, I'm too old. I can't be bold, or I can't do this. I can't live my best life. I can't do this. I can't get fit. I can't find a partner who I can't have romantic love at this age. I'm too old. I can't have my dream job. I'm too old. I can't do this. I'm too old. But like, this is a perfect example of something where you are never too old to live your best life.
And to boot, it goes back to that external measurements, right? Let's not measure ourselves against the clock.
Yeah. No, it's 100%, but it's the truth, right? Like, and it's also the brilliance and opportunity happen when you're coming from an authentic, I hate to use that word again, but authentic place. This woman built a $1 billion brand of chocolates because she felt like there was a need for it. She loved chocolate, and now this thing became available and on the FDA approval list, and it came from a place of her desire to want something like that, right? She didn't make it for any other reason than that. And things have a domino effect to them. So if you act from a place of like the right intention and like authenticity, other things the ripple effect happens. Like to me, that is just another example of it.
Yes, it is that flow state place.
Yes, flow state, exactly.
Yes, where we are really collaborating with source or whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
Because we're open and available to it.
Oh, exactly.
But we're also, to our point in our earlier conversation, we're not just going, okay, I'm open and available, bring it to me. But we have to, if I had just said, I really want to, meet fun and interesting people, but I closed off on my laptop with my music in my ears, and I didn't turn to her and say, hi, how are you? Oh, what a cute baby. Let's have a conversation.
Exactly.
That would have been a completely missed opportunity.
A total missed opportunity. And I hate missed opportunities. And so it just, And I think I always say rejection is always better than regret. That's what I live by
I
that.
say that all the time as well. Oh my
Oh my God,
goodness.
that's like a major motto of mine.
Major motto of mine as
Yeah.
well. I mean, we could print a coffee table
Yeah,
book.
we really can. Well, it's true though, right? Like rejection hurts and stings for what? A minute to maybe a week if it's really
Right.
bad.
Right.
But regret you live with forever. And
Absolutely.
you'll that guttural feeling of like, what if I did that? Or what if I said that? Or what if I turned to that woman, with the 2-year-old? I never want to be in that place. I've had a couple things that happen that still live with me because of that. So I always act differently than what I acted like in that time.
Absolutely. Life looks very different in a rearview mirror for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So I know that I could talk to you forever.
And
And
you.
and so I don't know. We may just need to have like a part 2 at some point. But for today, I always love to wrap up this podcast by asking a question. Typically, what we do is we look at the past, we look at the present, we look at the future. So there's actually 2 questions because I feel like we've dabbled in the past and the present, and now turning and facing the future. What do you hope for the future? What is your goal for the future? Where are you aiming your arrow in the future?
Personally, my goal is to make children feel self-confident, feeling competent, right? Feeling that they have self-efficacy and that they become productive, happy, and self-confident human beings who have grit and have potential. That to me is where I'm going. That's my future. My future is to help on that path, to help in that group of people who are trying to help move our younger generation, our Gen Alpha, as I think is what the name is now.
I love it. And we have lots to talk about because Soul Sway Practice is going to be having a very specific segmented market that is going just to that generation. So we have lots to talk about offline.
That's amazing.
Yes. So we are really going to embody it with them. So my last question to you then is, and we ask this to everybody, and I say this every time, one day I'm actually going to bring in a mirror, but as if you were holding a mirror up, because this is look at me now. And the whole idea of this podcast is that we don't externally measure ourselves. The idea is we're removing the external gaze and we're turning the mirror on ourselves. And in that moment of self-reflection, of self-validation, acknowledgement, advocacy, agency, looking in that mirror, what do you most want to hear or remind yourself of in that reflection, right here and right now? If I were to literally hold a mirror up to you and you looked and gazed in and said, you know what, Jen? This is what I want to reflect to you.
That's an interesting question. And I don't even know how to answer the question. Is it what I see from the inside?
Yeah. Jen, here's what I want you to know.
I think I would say I'm living.
Look at you now.
Yeah, I'm living a life that I curated and I designed and chose. And I think to me, I never wanted to assimilate. And so for me, the fact that I live by my own beat and my own drum, and I really I think to me, that's what I think that is what that would mirror would say to me, that I am living by my own terms, my own, I make the rules of my own life. I'm not anybody's boss except my own. And I'm doing exactly what I want with who I want, when I want, whenever I want. And that's to me is what success is.
I mean, brah fucking vo is what I have to say to that. I am humbled, grateful, inspired, excited, a lot of verbs right now.
A lot of verbs.
And it's all because you've taken the time to be here and to share your experience and your expertise with us. And I'm pretty sure I found a new best girlfriend.
Yes.
So here's to that as well.
It's like
Cheers.
Lily's, the founder of Lily's.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, stay curious, people. Stay curious. If there is a moral to this story, stay bold, stay curious.
And be curious.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're signing off for now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
Everybody,
having me.
follow this woman to the ends of the earth, wherever she is, on the line, in the world, on the interwebs, everywhere.
Wherever, exactly.
All the places. All right. Season 1. That's a wrap, y'all. Sending love.
Bye.
Bye.
Join us for Look at Me Now, wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to share, like, and subscribe.